The tech billionaire invited the Asian janitor as a joke, but she arrived like a CEO, and everyone was in absolute shock when they found out who she really was. The main auditorium of the Chin Technologies headquarters in San Francisco erupted with condescending chuckles when Sarah Kim walked through the glass doors wearing a suit that cost more than the annual salary of most people present. It wasn't laughter of welcome. It was pure, calculated mockery. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence," Marcus Chin whispered to his investors, raising his glass of Cristal champagne. "Our dedicated night shift cleaner." Sarah was 34 years old and never imagined she would one day step foot in that corporate boardroom as a guest, even if it was for a cruel joke. For 3 years, she had cleaned every inch of that tech campus, always invisible, always silent, watching those wealthy entrepreneurs treat each other with performative respect while treating her like she was part of the office equipment. The invitation had arrived 4 days earlier, delivered with a smirk she knew all too well. "Product launch celebration Thursday," Marcus had said, handing her the platinum embossed envelope. "Cocktail attire required. You surely have something appropriate in your closet, don't you?" The snickers of his executives echoed through the server room. It was an obvious setup, an attempt to humiliate her publicly, to put her in her place in front of Silicon Valley's elite. Marcus had even invited tech journalists to document what he called a social experiment. "Let's make this interesting," Marcus had said to his wife Jennifer as Sarah emptied the trash cans the night before. "I bet $150,000 she doesn't have the nerve to show up, and if she does, she'll be the entertainment for the evening." Jennifer laughed cruelly. "You're ruthless, Marcus. The poor woman will probably show up in something from Target and feel so out of place she'll leave within 10 minutes. But Marcus Chin didn't know two fundamental things about Sarah Kim. First, she had grown up in boardrooms like this long before she had to clean them to survive. Second, some hurricanes don't destroy buildings. They just teach you how to rebuild them stronger. As she walked through the auditorium under the mocking stares, Sarah kept her posture straight and her expression calm, like someone carrying secrets that could turn that world upside down. Her steps were confident, calculated, as if each movement were part of a carefully planned strategy. "My God, she actually came," whispered David Park, a venture capitalist, to his colleague. "And look how she's dressed. Where did she get that suit?" "She probably maxed out 3 credit cards and will be paying it off for years," replied Michelle Wong, daughter of a semiconductor magnate, trying to mask her own insecurity with cruelty. How embarrassing. What none of those people knew was that Sarah hadn't bought, borrowed, or financed that suit. She had simply gone back into her own past to retrieve it, a past that Marcus would have done anything to erase if he had known it existed. Marcus approached her, his chest puffed out with arrogance, surrounded by his billionaire investors. His confidence was through the roof. After all, he had orchestrated this as a public display of power and social dominance. "Sarah, what a pleasant surprise. I never doubted you'd come. After all, when a person like you receives an invitation to an event like this..." "A person like me?" Sarah repeated, her calm voice cutting through the air like a sharp blade. "Go on, Marcus. Finish your sentence." For a microscopic moment, something in her tone made Marcus hesitate. There was a firmness there that didn't match the submissive woman he knew from the hallways of his company, but arrogance quickly took over again. "Well, someone who doesn't normally frequent this kind of environment, you must be feeling quite overwhelmed by all this innovation and success." Sarah smiled. Not a submissive or nervous smile, but something dangerously serene that made some nearby guests stop laughing instinctively. "Overwhelmed?" she repeated softly, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made Marcus take a step back without realizing it. "No, Marcus, I'm feeling exactly where I've always belonged." The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough for the atmosphere of the party to change completely. There was something about the way Sarah spoke, the way she moved, the way she occupied the space that defied all expectations those people had about who she should be. Marcus cleared his throat. trying to regain control of the situation. Well, I hope you enjoy the evening. I'm sure it will be educational for you. Oh, I'm sure it will be educational for all of us, Sarah replied, her gaze slowly sweeping over the group of guests as if cataloging each face for future reference. If you're enjoying this story of twists and justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what those privileged people didn't know was that Sarah carried with her a secret so explosive that it would turn that night of planned humiliation into the greatest lesson on prejudice and underestimating people that Silicon Valley had ever witnessed. Marcus was having more fun than he had imagined. Sarah hadn't run away in embarrassment as he had expected. She remained there with that strangely confident posture that was beginning to bother him in an inexplicable way. Everyone, Marcus announced loudly, tapping a metal spoon against his crystal glass to get the attention of all the guests. I'd like to introduce our special guest tonight, Sarah, our dedicated night shift janitor. Laughter echoed through the auditorium like cruel waves. Cell phone flashes began to pop as tech moguls took photos to post on their social media accounts with sarcastic captions. Marcus, Jennifer murmured beside him, feigning concern. Don't you think you're being a little harsh? Harsh? Marcus laughed loudly. I'm giving her the opportunity of a lifetime. When else would someone like her get the chance to network with people like this? Sarah stood motionless in the center of the room, all eyes fixed on her. But instead of the embarrassment they expected to see, there was something unsettling about her expression, a serenity that seemed to come from someone who had weathered far worse storms. David Park approached with his group of investors, all wearing venomous smiles. Sarah, dear, tell me, how long did it take you to choose that suit? It must have been so challenging to find something appropriate for an event like this. Actually, Sarah replied with a calmness that made David hesitate. This suit has a very special history. It belonged to my mother. Her mother? Michelle Wong laughed nastily. Then where did her mother get a suit like that? Some high-end consignment shop? Sarah smiled, but there was something dangerous in that smile. My mother wore this suit the last time she was in a boardroom like this. That was 15 years ago, when she was still Sarah Kim Chen. The silence that followed was deafening. Some people stopped talking, realizing that something important was being said. Marcus, who had been laughing with his close associates, turned slowly. What did you say? Kim Chen, Sarah repeated, her voice cutting through the air like a sharp blade. It's funny how some people choose to conveniently forget their own family history. Marcus's face began to pale. Jennifer instinctively grabbed her husband's arm, sensing that something was terribly wrong. You're delusional, Marcus said, but his voice came out less firm than he intended. I don't know what game you're playing, but... This isn't a game, Marcus. Sarah took a step toward him, and several guests instinctively backed away. It's history. Our history. The history you tried to erase when you decided it was more convenient to pretend that certain people in our family never existed. The cell phone cameras continued to record, but now for a completely different reason. Whispers began to spread through the room like wildfire. Jennifer pulled Marcus by the arm. What is she talking about? She's lying, Marcus replied, but his hands were shaking slightly. She's a disturbed employee trying to get attention. Sarah reached into her small purse and pulled out an object that made several guests gasp. It was a watch, not just any watch, but the traditional Chen family Rolex, engraved with the family crest and featuring the distinctive dragon design that had been passed down for generations. This watch, Sarah said, holding it up for all to see, was given to my mother by her father, William Chen. My grandfather, the man you told your employees died without leaving any heirs. Marcus was now visibly shaken. Where did you get that? How dare you steal? Steal? Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Marcus, you can't steal something that is rightfully yours by birthright. David Park, who had been watching open-mouthed, whispered to his friend, "My God, do you think she's telling the truth?" "Impossible," Michelle murmured, but her voice no longer sounded so confident. "Marcus would have told us if he had a cousin." Sarah heard the whisper and turned to them. "Cousin? No, Aviv, I'm not Marcus's cousin." She paused dramatically, looking directly at Marcus. "I'm his half-sister." The room exploded in murmurs and muffled exclamations. Marcus looked as if he had been struck by lightning. "This is ridiculous," he shouted, but his voice cracked. "My father would never. You're making this up." "William Chin had an affair with my mother, Grace Kim, for 6 years," Sarah continued relentlessly. "She was the company's software architect. When she found out she was pregnant with me, your father promised to take care of us, and he kept his promise until he died." Jennifer now had one hand over her mouth, staring between Sarah and Marcus as if watching a car crash in slow motion. "You," Sarah said, pointing directly at Marcus, "decided it would be easier to pretend we never existed. You cut off our trust fund, sold the house your father bought for my mother, and left us in absolute poverty." "I had no obligation to," Marcus began, but Sarah interrupted him. "You had no obligation to take care of your father's family? Interesting philosophy, considering you inherited 100% of a fortune that should have been divided between us." The weight of Sarah's words was slowly sinking into the minds of the guests. Several began to move away from Marcus, as if physical proximity could contaminate them with scandal. "Prove it," Marcus said desperately. "Anyone can make up a story and come up with a watch." Sarah smiled again, and this time there was something predatory in her expression. "Oh, Marcus, do you really think I came here without proof?" She took her phone and motioned to someone near the entrance. "You can come in now." Each new humiliation of Marcus only fueled something inside Sarah that he couldn't understand. A silent force that grew in direct proportion to the injustice he tried to impose. What those privileged people didn't know was that every act of contempt was writing his own sentence. And Sarah had spent 15 years learning exactly how to collect every penny of a debt that transcended money. 3 people entered the auditorium at that moment who would change the lives of everyone present forever. The first was Rebecca Martinez, Silicon Valley's most respected investigative journalist. The second was James Liu, an attorney specializing in corporate inheritance law. The third made Marcus Chin stagger as if he had been punched in the stomach. "Dr. Thompson," Jennifer murmured, recognizing the family's private physician. "What are you doing here?" Dr. Thompson, who had treated William Chin during the last years of his life, walked to the center of the room. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. 15 years ago, I was forced to falsify medical records. William Chin did not die of natural causes. He was slowly poisoned with digitalis over a period of weeks." The auditorium erupted in muffled cries. Rebecca Martinez raised her hand. "Please keep your phones recording. This is an official confession being documented for legal purposes." Marcus was visibly desperate, sweating. "You're insane, Thompson. My father died of a heart attack." "Your father discovered the millions you'd been embezzling from the company pension fund," Dr. Thompson continued relentlessly. "He had changed his will to include Sarah and was about to report you to the SEC when he began showing strange symptoms." Sarah remained silent, tears of relief in her eyes. Finally, after 15 years, someone was telling the truth. James Liu opened his briefcase and took out an official document. This tissue sample was tested last month by an independent laboratory. The digitalis levels were lethal. "You're making this up," Marcus shouted, but his voice was completely uncontrolled. "It's a conspiracy to destroy me." Rebecca Martinez stepped forward. "Mr. Chin, I have transcripts of 7 conversations you had with Dr. Thompson between 2008 and 2009 where you threatened to destroy his medical license." Sarah finally spoke, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Marcus, You didn't just kill our father. You stole 15 years of my life. I didn't kill anyone. Marcus pointed his finger in all directions. You're all lying. Then explain this, said Sarah, connecting her phone to the auditorium sound system. A recording began to play. Marcus's voice was unmistakable. Thompson, you're going to keep your mouth shut about anything suspicious you found in the old man's blood work. If you breathe a word of this, I guarantee you'll never practice medicine again. And as for that woman and her illegitimate daughter, they can fend for themselves. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the people who had defended Marcus now moved away from him as if he were radioactive. Jennifer stared at her husband in horror. Marcus, you really did this? 15 years! Sarah screamed, her composure breaking momentarily. 15 years of cleaning my own father's blood off the hands of his killer. Sarah took a deep breath and regained her deadly calm. You want to know how I got all of this evidence? I didn't come to work here by accident. I applied specifically for this position. I spent 3 years preparing, gaining access to the building, collecting evidence. Marcus tried one last desperate gambit. Even if all that is true, it doesn't change anything. The inheritance was distributed years ago. James Liu smiled for the first time. Actually, Mr. Chen, when there is evidence of murder, all assets can be redistributed according to the original will. And we have a copy of William Chen's actual will. Sarah approached Marcus, who was leaning against the wall like a cornered animal. Do you know what my biggest mistake was, Marcus? It was believing that you would change on your own. Please, Marcus whispered, all arrogance evaporated. Jennifer, the children, this will destroy our family. You destroyed our family the moment you chose greed over justice. Marcus collapsed into a chair, completely defeated. His transformation from arrogant tech mogul to exposed criminal had taken less than 3 hours. Sarah looked at Marcus one last time. He was broken. But that was only the beginning. What Marcus didn't realize and would discover in the worst possible way in the next few hours was that Sarah had spent years gathering evidence not only about her father's death, but about all the financial crimes, insider trading, and corruption he had committed over the decades, weaving a web of justice so meticulous that his downfall would be spectacularly complete. The next 3 hours turned the most exclusive product launch in Silicon Valley into the biggest scandal the tech industry had ever witnessed live. Marcus was now sitting on the floor of the auditorium, his back against the wall, watching his entire empire unravel in real time. Rebecca Martinez had connected her laptop to the auditorium's projection system, and documents, photos, and recordings appeared on the giant screen for all the guests to see. This is a wire transfer of $500,000 from Marcus Chen's personal account to Dr. Thompson, dated 4 days after William Chen's death, Rebecca narrated as the image appeared on the screen. And the memo on the transfer reads, "Consultation fee, confidentiality assured." Jennifer was now on the other side of the room, as far away from her husband as possible, crying silently as she processed 15 years of lies. And this, Rebecca continued, is a recording of Marcus discussing with his CFO how to hide the pension fund embezzlement. Marcus's voice echoed through the room. I needed to make the numbers work. If anyone discovers I've diverted the $30 million over the last 7 years, I'm finished. Blame it on market volatility, R&D costs, whatever. David Park whispered to his friend, my God, he stole from his own employees' retirement funds. Sarah remained in the center of the room, calm as the eye of a hurricane, watching each revelation systematically destroy the life of the man who had murdered her father. James Liu approached with a new folder. Mr. Chen, in addition to the criminal charges, I must inform you that Miss Kim is filing a $75 million civil suit against you for wrongful death and misappropriation of inheritance. $75 million? Marcus looked up with glazed eyes. I don't have $75 million. No, Sarah said softly, but your company is worth $200 million, and half of it has always been mine by right. Rebecca Martinez continued the devastating presentation. We also have evidence that Marcus engaged in insider trading with at least 8 different stocks, bribed 4 city council members, and diverted charity funds to personal offshore accounts. Each new revelation drew gasps of horror from the guests. People who had arrived as Marcus's business partners now moved away as if he were radioactive. "Sarah," Marcus said in a broken voice, "please, you got what you wanted. Stop this." Sarah stepped forward and knelt in front of him, looking directly into his eyes. "Marcus, you killed our father. You stole my family, my inheritance, my dignity. You made me clean his blood off your hands for 3 years. I can make it up to you," he whispered desperately. "There is no making up for 15 years of injustice," Sarah replied with haunting calm. "But there are consequences." Jennifer's phone rang. It was one of their children calling from Stanford. "Mom, is everything okay? They're saying on social media that Dad is a murderer." Jennifer looked at Marcus with utter disgust. "Your own children are finding out what kind of monster you are through Twitter." Marcus tried to stand, but his legs gave way. "Jennifer, please." The children. "No," Jennifer screamed, silencing the entire room. "You don't mention our children. You shamed them forever." Dr. Thompson approached Sarah. "Miss Kim, I must inform you that I've already contacted the FBI. Marcus will be arrested within the hour." "For what charges?" Sarah asked. "Murder, corporate fraud, insider trading, bribery, tax evasion. He will spend the rest of his life in federal prison." Sarah turned to the guests, who watched her with a mixture of admiration and terror. "I want everyone to understand one thing. I didn't do this for revenge. I did this for justice, for all the people who have been trampled on by men like Marcus Chen." David Park approached hesitantly. "Sarah, we were so sorry. We didn't know." "You knew I was treated like nothing," Sarah replied firmly. "You laughed. You participated. The only difference is that now you know I have more money than you." The sound of sirens began to echo from outside. The FBI had arrived. Marcus looked at Sarah one last time. "You've destroyed my life." "No," Sarah said, standing up with all her dignity. "You destroyed your own life the moment you chose evil. I just made sure the truth came out." As the federal agents entered to arrest Marcus, Sarah walked out onto the building's terrace. Outside, dozens of reporters were waiting, TV cameras, photographers, journalists. The story had already gone viral. Jennifer approached her on the terrace. "Sarah, I really didn't know anything." "I know," Sarah said gently. "You were also a victim of his lies." "What's going to happen now?" Sarah looked out at the city sparkling below. "Now, Jennifer, justice will finally be served. And maybe Silicon Valley will learn that true innovation comes from integrity, not exploitation." As Marcus was led away in handcuffs by the FBI, passing through the same auditorium where he had tried to humiliate her hours earlier, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in 15 years: peace. What Marcus would discover in the next few hours in federal custody was that Sarah had planned every detail not only of his downfall, but also of the complete rebuilding of her own life, and that Chin Technologies now had a new CEO who would make sure to use that power to protect exactly the kind of people he used to exploit. 8 months later, Sarah Kim Chen sat in Marcus's former office, now completely redesigned. The walls that once displayed trophies of greed now displayed certificates from educational programs and photos of employees promoted from entry-level positions to leadership roles. Marcus had been sentenced to 30 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The charges included first-degree murder, corporate fraud, insider trading, bribery, and tax evasion. His personal fortune was completely seized to cover restitution to victims. Sarah was just one of many people he had harmed over the years. "Miss Kim Chen," said Anna, her new executive assistant who had previously worked in the company's cafeteria, "TechCrunch is here for the interview about the company's transformation." Sarah smiled. In 8 months, she had increased the company's revenue by 60% simply by treating employees like human beings. Fair salaries, promotions based on actual merit, and a respectful work environment had created a level of innovation that Marcus had never achieved with his toxic leadership. Jennifer had divorced immediately and moved to Portland with her children. Before leaving, she sought out Sarah to apologize in person. "You could have destroyed us completely, but you chose to protect my children. I will never forget your compassion." "Children don't pay for their parents' crimes," Sarah had replied. "They deserve the chance to be better people than he was." Dr. Thompson now worked as the company's chief medical officer, providing free health care to all employees. "I never thought I'd have the courage to do what was right," he told Sarah during a board meeting. "You taught me that it's never too late to find our integrity." David Park and Michelle Wong had tried to reconnect with Sarah in the weeks following the scandal, but she maintained a professional distance. "You mocked me when you saw me as inferior. Now you want my partnership because you discovered my bank account. That tells me everything about your character." Sarah's story had become a global phenomenon. She received invitations to speak at business schools about ethical leadership, but she preferred to focus on the actual work. "I don't want to be famous for surviving," she explained in a rare interview. "I want to be known for what I built from the ashes." The company now funded coding boot camps for underprivileged youth, a microfinance program for immigrant entrepreneurs, and had created the largest employee mental health support system in Silicon Valley. On a quiet evening, Sarah received an email from prison. It was from Marcus. "Sarah, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know that you taught me the person I became was a monster. I spend every day trying to understand how I turned into someone capable of killing his own father for money. My children asked about you during their last visit. They want to meet the aunt who protected our family when their father failed them." Sarah archived the email without responding. Forgiveness was a personal journey, but justice had already been served. During the TechCrunch interview, the journalist asked, "Some people say your response was too harsh. What do you say to that?" "Revenge would have been doing to him what he did to me," Sarah replied calmly. "Justice is ensuring he pays for his crimes and that other people don't suffer what I suffered. There's a fundamental difference between the two." "And what advice would you give to people facing similar injustices?" Sarah looked out the window, watching employees collaborating in the innovation garden that now offered them respect and opportunity. The best revenge is not destroying those who hurt you. It's building something so magnificent that the injustice you suffered becomes merely the first chapter in a story of triumph. That night, Sarah returned home, no longer to the studio apartment where she had nursed her dreams of justice, but to a beautiful house where she had taken in 3 foster children who, like her, needed a second chance at life. As she helped the kids with their science projects, she thought of the father she had barely known but whose blood ran through her veins. William Chen would be proud to see that his daughter had not only reclaimed what was stolen from her, but had transformed a company built on exploitation into a beacon of innovation and dignity. Sarah's true victory wasn't destroying Marcus. It was proving that when you build power on justice rather than fear, that power multiplies and lifts everyone around you. Marcus tried to humiliate a janitor and ended up discovering that he had underestimated an heiress. More importantly, he learned that dignity cannot be bought, inherited, or stolen. It is earned through the choices we make when no one is watching. If this story of justice touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove good always triumphs when you have the right strategy, and that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone has chosen to ignore.